You just got the biggest raise of your career. Within 6 months, you finally look successful. 2 years later, the coworker who still drives a dented 15-year-old sedan buys a house in cash. This is the story of how that happens and why, if you're not careful, it happens to you from the wrong side. Start at the beginning. The raise lands in your account and something shifts in your head. You've worked hard for years, and for the first time, the number feels like proof. Proof you're doing well. Proof you've made it to the next level. And the strange thing about proof is that it feels incomplete until other people can see it. So you upgrade. Not recklessly. That's the part nobody admits. Each decision feels reasonable on its own. The car lease is only a few hundred a month, and you spend hours in that car anyway. The watch is an investment in how clients perceive you. The apartment in the better building is safer, closer to work, and honestly, you deserve it. The new phone, the better clothes, the dinners at places where the menu doesn't show prices. One by one, each purchase makes sense, and it works. That's the trap. It genuinely works. People treat you differently. The neighbors nod with a little more respect. Your relatives mention you when they talk about who's doing well. Somewhere in your chest, a quiet anxiety you've carried since childhood, the fear of being seen as someone who's falling behind, finally goes quiet. Meanwhile, there's this coworker. Same office, roughly the same salary, you're fairly sure. He drives that old sedan with the scratched bumper. His phone is 3 generations behind. He brings lunch from home in a container that has survived at least a decade. When the team goes out, he comes along, orders modestly, laughs at the jokes, and leaves early. You don't say it out loud, but you quietly feel a little sorry for him. All that work, and nothing to show for it. Nothing to show. Hold on to that phrase. It's going to mean something very different by the end of this. Because here's what your new life actually looks like from the inside. The lease payment leaves your account on the 2nd of every month. The apartment takes a third of your income. The card balances don't quite reach zero anymore. They hover, rolling forward, collecting a little interest each cycle. By the 25th of the month, you're checking your balance before you agree to plans. You, the person everyone thinks is thriving, are doing math in the pasta aisle. You earn more than you've ever earned, and you're closer to zero than you've ever been. There's a name for what's happening, and it's older than you'd expect. In 1899, an economist named Thorstein Veblen studied why people buy things that serve no practical purpose beyond being visibly expensive. He called it conspicuous consumption, spending whose real product isn't the item itself, but the message the item sends. The watch doesn't just tell time, it tells a story about the wrist wearing it. Veblen's uncomfortable observation was that for many purchases, the story is the entire point, and people will pay almost anything for a story about themselves that others will believe. That's what your raise actually bought, not comfort, a broadcast. And broadcasts are expensive to keep running. This is the mechanism almost nobody sees. A status purchase is never a single purchase. The car demands the insurance, the parking, the maintenance that matches its badge. The apartment demands furniture that doesn't embarrass it. The circle you now socialize in has its own price of admission. The trips, the gifts, the restaurants. You didn't buy a car. You bought a lifestyle with a subscription fee, and the fee renews whether you're ready or not. Now, back to the coworker with the dented sedan, because researchers have actually gone looking for people like him. In the 1990s, two researchers, Thomas Stanley and William Danko, set out to study American millionaires, expecting mansions, luxury cars, designer everything. What they found became one of the most famous studies in personal finance. The majority of the millionaires they surveyed lived in ordinary neighborhoods. They drove ordinary cars, often bought used. They wore inexpensive watches. Most had never spent more than a modest amount on a suit. Meanwhile, the researchers kept encountering the opposite type: high earners in impressive houses with impressive cars, and almost no actual wealth behind any of it. There's an old Texas expression they borrowed to describe them: big hat, no cattle. The pattern was so consistent it flipped the entire picture. Looking rich and being rich weren't just different. In case after case, they were competing for the same dollars, and every dollar could only go to one side. That's the whole paradox hiding in plain sight. Every dollar has exactly one life to live. It can spend that life as proof, visible, parked in the driveway, worn on your wrist, admired by people at red lights. Or it can spend that life as wealth, invisible, sitting in accounts and assets, quietly growing, seen by no one. It cannot do both. So the more of your income you convert into evidence of wealth, the less of it ever becomes wealth. The look and the reality aren't just different things, they're built from the same raw material, and every choice moves material from one to the other, which means the coworker's old sedan isn't a sign of what he doesn't have, it's the visible edge of what he does. Every year that car stays in his life, the difference between it and your lease payment goes somewhere. You just can't see where, because the whole point of where it goes is that it's invisible. You don't figure this out from a book, though. You figure it out the hard way on an ordinary Tuesday when your company announces restructuring. Nothing happens to you, not this round. But for 1 week, you sit with a question you've been outrunning for 2 years. If the salary stopped, how long would this life last? You open your banking app and do the honest math. The answer is about 5 weeks. 2 years of looking successful, and you are 5 weeks from the whole thing collapsing. The coworker, you later learn, barely reacted to the announcement, not because he's braver, because his math gave a different answer. And here's the final twist of the knife, the reason the whole performance was never going to pay off anyway. Psychologist Thomas Gilovich and colleagues ran a series of experiments on something they called the spotlight effect. People drastically overestimate how much others notice what they wear, drive, and own. In one study, participants wearing an embarrassing t-shirt guessed that about half the room had noticed it. The real number was closer to a quarter. Everyone walks around starring in their own movie, assuming the audience is watching closely. But the audience is busy, starring in theirs. Read that against your last 2 years. The people you upgraded your life for glanced at the car once, formed a half-second impression, and went back to worrying about their own broadcast. You've been paying full price, every month, for a performance almost nobody was watching. So the paradox finally resolves into something simple. Many people who look rich are spending their wealth on the looking, often precisely because they feel they have something to prove. And many people who are rich stopped performing years ago because they no longer need the audience, which frees up the one resource the performance was consuming. The signal and the substance were always rivals. Whoever needs the signal most can afford it least. Here's what changes, and notice what doesn't. You don't burn your life down. You let the lease expire and buy a solid used car outright. You keep the few things you genuinely love. It turns out there are only 2 or 3, and quietly let the rest go at the pace the contracts allow. The subscription fee on your old identity shrinks month by month, and the difference starts flowing somewhere invisible instead. And the reaction from everyone whose opinion you were paying for? Nothing. No one asks about the car. No one mentions the watch. The silence stings for about a week, and then it becomes the most liberating discovery of your financial life. If nobody noticed the performance ending, nobody was ever really watching it. The prison never had a guard. Fast forward a few years, there's a newer hire at the office. Sharp, hardworking, first big raise, brand new car in the parking lot within a month. One morning he pulls in next to you, glances at your aging sedan with the scratched bumper, and gives you a polite, slightly pitying smile. You smile back. He can't see what you have. That was never the point of having it. Because real wealth was never the car in the driveway. It's the car that isn't there, and everything that quietly grew in its place.